rock crawling started in the early 80s when the Tamiya released the Hilux. It was a little four-wheel drive truck. It was all metal, had solid axles, locking hubs, that type of stuff. But it never performed well at all. Looked the part, but it just didn't do anything. Come from that, the TLT1 comes out. It's this little 18 scale monster truck. And now people are actually able to use 2.2 wheels. There were some tires from Proline available that you could use and convert these little crawlers into a 10 scale size using this 18 scale chassis. That started to take off, and in '99, I hosted a little event, just thinking it'd be kind of fun to get some people that are kind of into crawling. I brought my bruiser out.
I mean, Rich has always been into like the scale look of things. Like Rich has that eye for the product, right? And I knew he was into the Tamiya builds and stuff. So we go out to Light Oak Creek in the riverbed. And Richard like hand me the truck, you know, and we're out there driving. And I mean, I was just like, this is just totally different to what I was used to, right? And obviously, you know, heading up like all the racing development and stuff like that. So watching the articulation of the trucks go over the rocks and how real the trucks looked and stuff like that.
People brought all these cars. We had like 15 people from all over California show up for this event. But again, the same challenge was nobody had anything that was easy put together.
You know, everybody was piecing together little parts and stuff. There had been another car that had come into the marketplace that, you know, was kind of aimed at it, but it was kind of monster truck-ish. And, but it wasn't very durable. It wasn't very strong.
And then Axial comes along. Now, at the time, they were only doing nitro motors and some other miscellaneous stuff, but they were starting to dabble out there. You could see that there was something coming.
In 2005, I was working at HPI. They had kind of they had just come off of like a slowdown, and they were talking about layoffs and stuff like that. At the time, Jason Dearden was the R&D director, and Jeff Johns was R&D manager. Basically, Jeff decided that he was going to leave, and the main vendor for HPI told him that he wanted to start a company in the United States. So Jeff Johns and Leroy Chafin II left. Leroy was the sales guy at HPI. They both left to form an OEM company called KSD. KSD was designed to, or meant to, bring OEM business to this manufacturer in Taiwan. And, you know, Leroy was going to be the sales guy, and Jeff was going to be the main guy managing the company. I think it was June, late June, I got a phone call from Jeff. And I knew instantly that it was probably for a job interview. By September 1st, we had picked a new name, finalized the logo, and started Axial. Our first product, I think, came out in January of 2006, and it was a nitro motor.
I was new to RC at that level. You know, I had never worked in the industry before, so to come in and see how we were moving motors, they were going out as fast as they were coming in. And I was just surprised that, wow, these things are moving like crazy.
There was a guy named Brian Kinney, who was really well known in the RC world for tuning motors. And so he had already started and worked with the vendor in Taiwan to develop a motor. And the things about the motors were that they were really powerful, very inexpensive, and easy to tune. So we just, you know, worked with the vendor, massaged the motor stuff that they had, improved the carburetor. And then when I came in, I was the marketing director, and I was in charge of the stylizing and the packaging and the logo creation and all of that stuff. You know, so I was able to pick the colors and, you know, direct that stuff. Well, here's our main product, but what accessories and what little items can we add to our product line to make our product line grow? And we got presented with a bottle that was similar to somebody else had something similar out in the marketplace. So we just, you know, threw it out there. And the one thing about hobby shops is once you get a spot on their shelf, they will constantly just refill it. Even if there's stuff that comes along later that, you know, is similar or decent or you know, similar pricing, they'll just continue with what they got. And so that was, I mean, we sold tens of thousands of those. We were constantly amazed at how many of those we were selling. And even after we stopped selling nitro motors, we sold those bottles for years and years. And then after that, we started wheels and tires. And, you know, at the time, I like to, see what was in the marketplace and see, okay, well, where is there room for us? And we just continued to start to have different kinds of accessories and different kind of little trinket things that helped people, just, spacers and links and stuff like that. And that kind of stuff kind of led us into where we are today, which was the rock crawling segment. So all those little spacers and stuff is what, the motors did phenomenal for us. I mean, for 2 or 3 years, the numbers on the motors were insane. There was also some product that our Taiwan supplier had designed and developed that they wanted us to try to sell, which would never work. It was very bad. So they suggested maybe you guys could use some of the components. It had a rear solid axle and a front independent suspension in the front. It was nitro powered, but it was just bad all around. So we looked at that component and said, well, what can we make with the solid axle? What new segments are up and coming? Rock crawling was one of them. The other thing we talked about was making a nitro motorcycle. The motorcycle obviously never came to market. It just was never a good thing. And, but the rock crawler worked. And so it was just really kind of like those two products were what we were going to come into the market with. And we just kind of started going towards this rock crawling thing and doing the research and going and attending events. And we realized like this just fit our dynamic of who we were. Jeff was an avid off-roader, loved to go camping. Same with me, like I love to go off-roading, I love to go camping. And it just was this dynamic of us just going to these events. I had a little trailer at the time, we would go camp. We just kind of fed off of that, and that's what grew our desire to be in that segment and really press forward. And we were under the radar. There was no competition for us. The only competition we had was very small vendors that didn't have the resources we had. So we knew that there was not going to be another car in that segment. And I think we just hit the market at the right price point, at the right time, with the right product. We knew it was going to do really well based on feedback we had gotten, but I don't think we realized it was going to do that well. Yeah.
I can remember back in the early days when the AX10 was the hot product.
The AX10, when it came out, it literally turned the RC market on its head, to be honest. Because all of a sudden there was now this vehicle that anybody could build, but because it was so slow and had four-wheel drive traction, anybody could drive them on anything and they weren't worried about breaking them. And as time progressed, just like anything else, people wanted to start being competitive about it. It was interesting because at that time, not everybody was a true hardcore enthusiast of off-roading that was getting into crawling. They just liked the look of this vehicle that could articulate the suspension and do all this crazy stuff with these big tires and stuff. But it still made it fun because you were challenging yourself and you weren't racing against someone else. You were competing against yourself to challenge yourself to get over obstacles in a certain amount of time. I think that was one of the appeals of comping, is that you weren't racing with 10 guys and someone else wasn't going to ruin your event. You were going to ruin your own event if you didn't hit the line right.
I was in Taiwan finalizing the production on the AX10. And when I returned, I found out that we were going to be sponsoring this event, which was put on by Jake Hallenbeck and Parker. And that was their event. I guess, I don't know if it was the first time they had the event or if they had it before or not, but it was the first time that we were going to be the main sponsor. And when we met them in person, we just all clicked. We all got along. We just became fast friends with them. And from that point forward, we were the main sponsor for that event every year.
It became the Axial West Coast Championship. There was another organization that was doing, rock crawling nationals or something like that. And the early conversations were maybe we could do a West Coast and East Coast and then a final, like a world championship or something like that. But it never actually transpired into all of that because as we kept doing the West Coast National, the West Coast just got more popular and more popular.
We got heavily involved with it because you know, it was the main rock crawling event. I mean, there was a couple back east, but here in California, it was like a big thing. And so we got really heavily involved in the marketing side of things and really helped push, and we created logos, and, you know, we continued to grow it. And interestingly enough, the reason why we decided at some point to change it was Losi came out with the comp crawler, and Losi would, at the time, would sponsor very little of an event. They would just put forth a little bit of money and go to the event, and they were doing it right. They would go to the event, create this huge buzz after the event with all these pictures and a race report and all this stuff, and, you know, get what they needed out of it. And we were putting out a lot of effort at that point, you know, really helping with because the event had grown so large. So the reason why we decided to move it to just a customer-based experience was because of that amount of effort. And we decided that, you know, this really should be about our customers, because we were the ones putting out the most amount of money and the most amount of effort, and wanted to capitalize on that. So it was actually Losi that encouraged us to do that. And here we are, you know, as part of the Horizon Group, and we're buddy-buddy with Losi.
We figured out that actually there are way more people scale crawling and walking trails and hiking trails and doing all that than there are comp crawlers. You know, the comp crawler attendance was going down and everybody wanted to go scale wheel. So Rodney figured out, I'm sure he had conversations, but Rodney basically said, hey, we need to shift gears and let's just have a huge get together of Axial fans that are totally into the SCX10 and the AX10, and just get everybody together and go wheel. And we decided to shift it and start calling it Axialfest. And I think he found the campground Cisco Grove. We wound up being able to host it there, and it took off, because there's like 300 plus campsites at that campground. And by holding an Axial Fest, it all of a sudden turned it into, you didn't have to be this crazy good competitive guy to go out and have fun. It turned it into, let's go have fun. Forget all the rules. Let's just go out and drive RC cars, you know. And that's what really made Axial Fest kind of transition and just blow up, was anybody and everybody could do it. You know, we just want to get people together. And I always talk about the thing that sticks out to me the most about that even being possible is 2.4 gigahertz radio, because before that it was FM and AM, and everybody had channels and frequencies and crystals and all this stuff, and there was limited bandwidth for everybody to drive. And when you look at the numbers of people that were showing up at Axial Fest, it would never have been possible if 2.4 gigahertz didn't exist. So, you know, whoever brought that to RC changed the RC market for life.
One of my favorite things about this category has always been the very friendly family environment. Like, when you go to, I was a team manager for 10 years. You go to race events and there were people on that side, there were people on this side. I don't like these guys, that guy's a hack, blah, 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 this and that type of stuff. But when you went to crawling events or go to crawling events, it's like a huge community of everybody just has a good time. We're all there loving our RC hobby, where, yeah, you got some comps, but you know, it doesn't get too crazy. But even when you go on the scale side, it's a whole thing of family, friends, having a good time out on the trails, showing off your rigs, people looking at other people's rigs. Oh, that's a killer idea. You know, wanting to copy some ideas, learn from each other. And for me, my favorite part was the fact that I could bring my wife and son out, who aren't really into RC, and my wife would never drives one. But when we go out to these events, she loves, let's go camping. I want to go camping. Let's bring me a Jeep. I want something to drive. You know, I brought her an SCX10 the first time. She would wheel that all day long. I never thought she would be running them that long. She had a great time. My son has a great time. So it's that family environment that really is what I love about that. And that's what happened with the Axial Fest. When I went for the first time, I was just blown away at how many people were camping, just having a great time. It was such a great family, fun, friendship environment that it's just mind-boggling how much fun that is. And again, I've traveled all over the world. I've been to events all over the world for RC. I've been very fortunate that I've been able to. Nothing has ever been like Axialfest.
There's tons of RC car products out there. There's tons of brands out there. There's a lot of stuff out there, but there's nothing like Axialfest. To see 1,500 people show up to Axialfest and to see that those 1,500 people have 3 cars minimum per person, and then you add all that up and you think about it and you're like, holy cow, there's 4,500 to 5,000 RC cars at Axialfest playing around. And it's not like that anywhere else. And it's only Axial cars. It's not like bring your RC car of any make and model. It doesn't matter. It's only Axial cars. And that, to me, that's probably one of the most surprising things about the journey, is to see how well the brand has built up to be so appreciated by the fans and the lifestyle that we live, you know, with the RC cars and the off-roading and the family orientation and all that stuff. That's probably the most surprising thing to me.
So it wasn't long before I began to realize that, like, I could only take that original AX10 chassis so far. And so what everybody was doing after competitions was they put away their comp crawler and take out their scaler. So I said, okay, well, I can reuse the axles and I can reuse the transmission, and I can just recreate a chassis, a ladder frame chassis similar to the Bruiser. And then that we can put, a truck body on and make it more scale looking and have another platform. I always thought in families, right? So I always thought about, like, we can take this and also do this and this and this. What else could I reuse these components for? Coming from HPI, we knew that hobby shops space is a premium. So the more that we could reuse components and make it easier for the shop, the better. So that was the original SCX10, and it had the CF100 body on it, which was a CF stood for Chevy Ford. So it had elements of Chevy and elements of Ford, and the body was actually originally designed to also fit on nitro monster trucks, because it had this weird bump out where the fuel tanks would be, so it was kind of one of those things where, like, the body to us looked okay, but at the time it was supposed to have an interior and it was supposed to have all of these other components, but we couldn't get them done in time for launch, and the price kept going up. So we held back the interior stuff and pushed the kit out, and it did pretty well. Again, it was, people just looked at it for what it was. They took it as a base platform and put their own stuff on it.
And I think that's when you started to see the comping go down and the scaling started to go up, because now they looked like real vehicles. And again, the creative part of modelers and builders is that now they could put a winch, or they wanted to make a winch, or they wanted to paint the little driver, or they wanted to do that type of stuff. And other people could recognize that and appreciate the work, and, well, I want a little Chevy pickup truck, or I want a little Jeep or whatever. And that's where it started happening. So they kind of ran side by side. You had the comping, it got huge. And then I saw what I felt was the scalers starting to trickle in. You start getting to more comp events, and there's more guys with scalers out there bringing them out, running around, laying on the rocks, winching themselves, and that type of stuff. And at first it was kind of like, all right, that's kind of silly. But then when you really get into it and you start to see how close to realistic they look, it really made it a lot of fun. And I think that's where the transition happened. You had comping, got a little complicated, a little intimidating for most people, but the scalers brought those people in and kept them there because they were still able to crawl, but now they're starting to build these realistic looking vehicles. And that's where I think it headed off into the SCX10.
Jeep was our first major car license. Everybody was into off-roading. I mean, I was always like the lone wolf because I like just stuff that's off the wall. So, like, I had a 73 Bronco, but Randall had a Jeep, Jeff had a Jeep, Brad Dumont had a Jeep, Brandon Kuntz, who was with us at that point, he had grown up with his dad's CJ7. So we all kind of just knew that, like, that was for us the market, the Jeep market. Everybody owned Jeeps, right? It was just a natural thing that Jeep should be the one. And
Axial saw the opportunity to make a replica JK And we knew that if we did that, it would hit home with everybody that was already owning a Jeep.
Part of the reasons why we got that Jeep license is we flew out to meet with Jeep, and we basically Jeff told them that he wanted to build a replica of the Jeep that we were going to make. And so that, to them, they were blown away because they had never come across anybody that lived the lifestyle that wanted to do their licensing. And that really just signed the deal. And, they were Axial fans from that point forward. I mean, they still did other licensing agreements with other RC companies and stuff, but not to the extent that we were locked in.
It blew up. That was probably just another, that was another one of those stepping stones that we came across through building the brand, from the AX10 to the SCX10 to, bringing the Jeep out on the SCX10 chassis and getting into the Jeep market. And that just caused everybody that was in the Jeep world to have a connection to that brand all of a sudden.
So recall the West Coast Championships, Jake Hallenbeck. So he had a rig that he had built. That was his background. He built full-size rigs that he had built that I just loved it. He was at the very first West Coast Crawler Championships. It was this huge tube frame thing. It's called the Night Stalker 2. Well, the Wraith is a replica of that car. Jeff always wanted something, always wanted to kind of go fast. I mean, I did too. We always talked about the go fast market and trying to see how we could branch out beyond just the rock crawling segment, because, while we were doing phenomenal with it, we just weren't sure, is that going to be enough to carry us to that next level? So we were always looking for ways to build out our product line. And the Wraith, I was like, well, we can make this big, this really super cool rock buggy. And, and we kind of made it, again, we kind of made it a little fast because it was such a big tired thing and it was big. But at the end of the day, it was really just, a rock buggy rock crawler.
The Poison Spider deal kind of came about just by living the lifestyle and being out at Jeeping events and meeting people and going wheeling with people. And the McRaes were one of the groups of people. They were part of a Jeep club that I knew some people in, and we just kind of, started hanging out with them out at Johnson Valley and going to Jeep runs up in Big Bear and stuff like that, and became pretty good friends with them and had some conversations about making a Poison Spider vehicle, and their company was doing really well. And eventually it transpired into a deal through our marketing department to license the name and create a Poison Spider Wraith. So the impact was the connection to the lifestyle. The impact was Axial is off-roading, right? Axial RC is off-roading, and they're into off-roading, and we like the off-road community, we like the off-road lifestyle, we like Jeeping, we like buggies, we like desert, just all of that stuff. And so it really helped solidify the connection of Axial being eating, sleeping, and breathing the lifestyle of the off-road community.
And then as we continued to grow, we met other racers, and Randy was one of them. I remember the first time I ever saw Randy's rig was Last Chance Qualifier, and they were running it right by where we were camped. And I saw it and I went, man, that is a good looking rig. It was no graphics on it. It was silver body panels, and the motor sounded so mean and wicked. And that guy just ripped out of there. And I think he was the fastest qualifier that year. And, and I just remember seeing this bomb kind of thing on the side of it. And I was like, that'd be a really cool one to make, and then it took about a year, I think, of cultivating that relationship. And, he was really good friends with Jake, and that helped it along. And it was a fun project. Brandon did that project and did an incredible job. And a lot of the elements that he did on that car, when I would work on cars later, I would pull those elements over, like the whole battery box that's sealed and you see vents and stuff like that. I put that on the Wraith 1.9 and on the Capra, just because it's such a cool way to hide the battery.
reason that I like the R10 Bomber so much is helps me get out and run. Axial started a thing called a Scale Ultra 5K, and a Scale Ultra 5K is where you run behind the RC car on a trail. And I did that at one of the Axialfest events and was like, wow, this is actually really cool. That car has gotten people to get out and get exercise and get out in the outdoors more. Once you see that, oh, you can take this car anywhere, and with battery capacity improvements, you can take it anywhere. And the Bomber just seems to be the more capable rig in that type of an environment.
We're trying to add more and more scale details into the product with each new release. And then, you see the excitement when people get it, and then you see them trying to scale it out even more to what they dreamed their full-size vehicle would be. And then they're going on their own personal adventures, right? They're out crawling, they're outside, outdoors, making their own adventures.
RC crawling and real crawling go hand in hand. They're very similar. And a lot of times you can even use RC crawling as a training tool to teach people how to off-road correctly. Our brand, if I'm still there in 15 years and, whatever, developing products, I think all we can do is just stay with the times and how the full-size industry evolves and changes. We just need to continue to do the same thing. I think every product we bring out, we're always trying to strive to make it a little bit better and raise the bar a little more and a little more and a little more. And we've done that with the SCX-10 and we've done that with the SCX-24. So I think we'll just keep doing the same thing.
I think we'll probably expand Axial into other facets of scale vehicles, maybe different segments that we've probably never been into before. Stuff that people probably aren't expecting Axial to do, but really speak to the Axial customer of scale.
There are so many cool vehicles out there and so many cool things that we're doing. We're ramping up the detail way more than we ever have in the past. That's kind of like maybe where things could go with the scale side of it, because you want to make it as real as possible. I truly believe people are into scale because they're able to build their dream vehicle that they can't build in the real world. Trust me, if I could build the Jeep that I'd love to build, it'd be 100+ K. It's never gonna happen for me. But I could build something out of my SCX-10 with my JL and get the fenders and do whatever I want and kind of bring that scale look and go out there and have fun and also not kill myself by rolling it down, a rocks or anything like that type of stuff. But that's the only thing I could think of. That's probably the next thing, is where we're gonna start getting into even more detail and making these things more realistic.
Axial is the lifestyle. Axial has become like a lifestyle in itself. The brand has always been committed to making good product and making product that fit the outdoor lifestyle.
So when we came out with SCX-24 and we first acquired Axial, it was something they actually had on the books for development. And I remember telling the Axial staff, I was like, hey, your numbers here are really off. They're like, oh, you don't think we're gonna sell that many? I was like, no, I think you're gonna sell 10 times more than that. And they were just blown away. They're like, why? And I'm like, it's like, you just think about just the scale side of it. You can build something, in the corner of your basement or in the garage or something like that. And then the whole aspect of taking those plastic model bodies, and you buy a SCX-24 deadbolt, take the body off it, get your 68 F100 truck that you remember your dad driving you down to the creek with, to go fishing, and you put that body on it. And then, as soon as we came out with SCX-24, you immediately saw the forums or the Facebook pages popping up with SCX-24, and you saw all that cool customization, right? And to the point where they were so customized, because obviously the plastic model bodies have so much scale detail in them, you're looking at it, you're like, is that real? Right? And it totally tricks you into it, right? And it just shows you just the cool factor of just having that smaller scale vehicle and be able to use those ABS style bodies.
I actually did not think it would sell at all. I thought it was just kind of a moment, just a small product that would sell for a little bit. I did not think it would go as crazy as it did. I still look at the numbers, the sales numbers, and just it just blows me away. Like, dude, I cannot believe we've sold as many of those as we have. I think it's price point, and I think it's small space. You know, we in the RC industry, I've learned over the years that in the wintertime, there's a lot of places back east that they can't go run their big cars outside and they can't do anything outside, so they need something to do inside. And the SCX24 was the perfect car for it. Didn't really click with me at first, but I can totally see it. So the price point and the space that's required to drive it, they're a kick in the pants. Once you get 8 or 10 of those little cars on the track trying to drive and wheel, I mean, it's like a mini KOH all of a sudden. It's just hysterically fun. It's amazing to see how far and now how many mods, how many modifications there are for the cars out there now. There's a ton of option parts. There's a ton of support for the product, and I don't know. We've seen some other people try to come into the market, but I think coincidentally or similar to when we brought the AX10 out and took the market by storm, I think the SCX24 has kind of done the same thing. It's been the go-to car, and it has the most support on it. So it's been a parallel lines, I guess, kind of, you know, something really cool to see that all the other products have come out, but they just don't hold the ground like the SCX24 has.
So, you know, we want to celebrate Axial's 15th year of being in business. Pretty profound, you know, where the company started with nitro engines, competition crawling, scale crawlers. The most probably iconic vehicle for Axial is the B17 Betty.
Ah, look at that. Sweet. It's a B17 on an SCX24 platform. Very cool. I like it.
And it was very easy for us to, you know, basically scan that body tool, which we did, scale it down, put that livery on there.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I see a serial number in there, 1212 and 9999. Is this limited?
And, you know, here we have the limited edition, you know, SCX24 B17 Betty that, you know, is serialized. You know, each one has its own number, comes with a cool little coin. It says limited edition. So just trying to create that celebration to where people can, you know, hey, if you want to go run it, you can run it. Or B, if you just want to have it as just that shelf queen to kind of keep, you know, that Axial brand in front of your mind and, you know, what you're excited about and where it kind of maybe takes you back to. Part of the proceeds are going to be going towards Hobbies for Good, which means we donate part of the money we make from the project to Hobbies for Good, which then goes to a charity that Horizon picks. And it just shows that Horizon's, you know, corporate social responsibility as at the front of our mind as we come out with projects like this. And, you know, with the success of the B17, it should donate a lot of money to that charity.
Seems like a really awesome throwback, and when people see it, I think they're just going to recognize, like, oh, that was the start of this crazy pinnacle ride.
I get to keep this one then?